fy nghegin. Today I'm going to be cooking with fantastic PGI Welsh lamb. Dwi'n defnyddio cig oen o Gymru wedi'i brynu gan y cigydd lleol. Meats that I'm going to be looking at in this particular demonstration is the top side. Now this top side is actually from the leg of lamb. This top side muscle is often cut down into steaks, and that's what I've got here, these lovely leg steaks. The leg steaks as well were actually tasted and tested as part of the Welsh lamb meat quality project, together with the loin and also the chump. Okay, so I'm going to start now by making a relish to go with the lovely lamb leg steaks. I'm going to start off just with some garlic, and I'm putting 2 cloves of garlic because I think garlic obviously goes beautifully with lamb. Roughly chop the garlic, an onion, and just roughly chop the onion, don't have to go too small with it. And then I've got some ginger. And what I want to do, I'm just going to grate the ginger. I think fresh ginger, again, goes beautiful with lamb and is lovely in a relish. And I'm using about a 3 centimetre piece. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is just quickly start frying this. Not to brown it, but just to soften it. So I'm going to put a little bit of oil in my pan. And then we'll add ginger, garlic and onion. And while that's softening, we'll come on to the fruits that I'm going to use. So 1 cooking apple, and I'm just going to peel and chop this again into quite rough pieces and just cut up the apple into nice chunks. Now onto the plums, and because these are quite small, I'm going to use about 4 lovely plums, nice and juicy, and again just chop up the plums. Okay, so what we want to do now, we'll just cook this just a little bit more, and then we can add our apple and plums. I'm going to add just a little bit more oil into there, and now the apple and the plums. Okay, now that's fried for a few minutes. What I'm going to do now is just add some sugar into there. So I'm adding 2 tablespoons of soft brown sugar, which is obviously again going to counteract that sharpness of the cooking apple. And then for the liquid, I've got some fruit juice. And this is just a red berry fruit juice, about 150 millilitres of that. And then we'll just bring this up to the boil. I'm going to put a lid on this then and let it actually simmer for about 10 minutes or so until the apple has broken down and become a lot softer. This lovely relish has now been cooking for about 10 minutes, and you can see now that it's all gone nice and soft, quite a thick consistency. So I think that's perfect, that's great. Right, so I'm now going to start frying the meat. Okay, so I'm going to get my pan really nice and hot. That's obviously very important because what we want to do is quick fry these. So hot pan, hot oil, and it's just going to have a few minutes each side cooking. So I'll just put a little bit of black pepper and some salt. Same on the other side. And now hopefully we'll just check to see if the pan is hot enough. Yeah, and you can hear that lovely sizzle. Okay, so just give it just a few minutes. And what I'm also going to do is just add a little bit of butter into there. And you're just going to see, wow, already browned nicely. That one a bit more. Okay, these have been cooking now for a few minutes each side, and what I'm going to do is just let them rest in the pan. We're going to leave them now for about 4 or 5 minutes before we serve them. The lamb has now been resting for a good 5 minutes or so we're ready to serve. Just before I serve the lamb, what I want to do, I've just made up a flavoured butter here, just by rolling it, nice softened butter, and then I put a little bit of fresh thyme in there, because obviously that goes really nice as well. So I'm just going to have a few of these slices just to put on top of our lamb. Finish off a little bit more salt. And what I'll do, I will actually cut into this steak so that we can see what it's like inside. That's been cooked, really nice pink lamb, and just top it off with a little bit of the butter. So there we have lovely Welsh lamb, the top side leg steaks, just very quickly pan fried, served with a fruity relish and some greens. I hope you'll have a go at making this recipe, and this recipe will be available on eatwelshlamb.com. Today I'm going to be cooking with fantastic PGI Welsh lamb, and what I'm going to make are Welsh lamb Wellingtons. Now the cut of meat that I'm using to make these is from the loin part of the lamb. Now what I'm actually going to use for the Wellington is the part of the loin here. Now this is often called the eye of the loin. So basically where we've got the chops here, it would be this part that we call the eye. Right, so I'm going to start to prepare the Wellington. So we'll put the chops back in the fridge. And what I want to do first, I'm just going to prepare a lovely herb sort of covering, a crust to go onto the lamb. And I'm using a nice mixture. I've got fresh thyme here and also some rosemary. And obviously these herbs complements the flavour of the lamb beautifully. Okay, and I'm just going to now roughly chop up the herbs. Okay, so I'm going to place the herbs just on a plate, because we're going to coat these lovely fillets now. And what I'm going to do as well is put quite a lot of black pepper and little bits of salt. And then just going to coat the lovely loins. And what I want to do now is actually just sear the lamb. Now that means really just very quickly frying this, because what I don't want is to start cooking the lamb really, but I want a nice hot pan so that I can very quickly just colour the lamb a little bit. And now I'm just going to pop the lamb into the pan. I'm just going to give it a couple of minutes now just to brown. And you see that it doesn't need long at all, just to start colouring nicely. Also, just make sure that you coat the sides, so you see the sides as well, and both ends. Okay, and that's enough cooking at this stage. So what I'm going to do now is just remove the loins, and then we'll just put them to one side. So what I want now is just for these to cool a little bit. And while we're waiting for them to cool down, we can go on to actually make the filling for our Wellington. What I'm using first are 2 cloves of garlic, which I'm just going to crush. Okay, so just roughly chop the garlic. I'm now going to use quite a large bunch of lovely spring onions, which have just been washed and topped, just the top and the base cut off. And just cut these up fairly small. And then just cut them up a little bit finer. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to pop them into the frying pan. to the mushrooms. Now I've got a couple of chestnut mushrooms and what I call just the ordinary mushrooms that we can buy. So the choice is yours. Certainly you don't have to have chestnut mushrooms, these are fine. And what we need is about 150 grams of mushrooms, and again, just chop them up. And then just chop them up just that little bit finer. Okay, so our mushrooms are now ready, and I'm just going to add them into the pan. And what we want to do now is just fry this to get the water as well out of the mushrooms and the spring onions. So I've added a little bit of extra oil and just fry this now for about 4 to 5 minutes. Now that this is reduced a little bit, I'm just going to add just a good splash of white wine. If you don't want to use white wine, you could just put a little bit of a vegetable stock in there. And again, bring it back to the boil, and we want this now to reduce and dry up a bit. Okay, so the liquid has now evaporated, and I'm left with a much drier now mushroom and spring onion mixture. So I'm going to turn that off. And then what we need to do is just cool this down quickly. So the best way is actually just to spread it out on a tray or on a plate and give it a couple of minutes just to cool down. Now we come on to the pastry, which is obviously a key part of Wellington. And I'm using shop-bought puff pastry for this. So this has been out of the fridge for about 30 minutes, and then I'm just going to roll it out to make the Wellington. Okay, so I'm now ready to assemble the Wellingtons. And what I'm going to do now, this is cooled nicely, so I'm just going to put about half of it in the centre of one of the pastry, and then the remaining. Again, just spread that, making sure you're leaving the edges of the pastry, obviously. And then we're going to pop our lovely Welsh lamb onto the top of that, put a little bit of egg around the edge. Then we come on to just folding it, press down tightly to make a seal, press on the ends, and I'm just going to very carefully lift them and pop them seal side down. Yeah, and then what I'm going to do now, just with a sharp knife, I'm just going to do little lines along the top, but not going in very deep at all. And then just finish off with a little bit of the egg, beaten egg. Now my oven is on already. I've got it on gas max 6, 200 degrees centigrade, so it needs quite a hot oven for about 15 minutes. Okay, so the lamb Wellingtons have come out of the oven. As you can see, they look wonderful. And while they're resting, what I want to do now is just a very quick sort of sauce. So in that pan that we fried our onion and our mushroom mixture, I'm just going to put a good tablespoon or dessert spoon of a lovely red currant jelly. Now I'm going to just put a little bit of boiling water, and what we'll do, we'll make sure we get all these lovely flavours that we had in our pan. And what I'm going to put now is actually some gravy granules. Now these are the vegetable gravy granules. So all I want to do now is bring this up to the boil, and I'm going to put a little bit of butter. There we are, simple as that. I'm going to switch off, I'll put a little bit of thyme in just to finish it off. A few sprigs. And now really I'm ready for serving these lovely Wellingtons. I'm just going to cut into this now so that we can actually see how it's cooked. Okay, and there you can see, beautiful and pink, really still tender. It'll have retained all that lovely flavour and juicy, very succulent Welsh lamb. So that's just such a simple dish to make and delicious. And I hope that you're going to have a go at making this.